We thought about just doing better and breathing faster.
I try to do better all the time.
Oh, Jer, you're doing amazing.
The way that you went from shady to immediate hard left so fast, you were like, I regret it. I regret it.
It's hard to be mean.
You do it
Like, you
so
must be
well,
exhausted
though.
all the time.
Not you do it so well. Hello, hello, lovely people. Welcome into That Sounds Gay. This is the RuPaul's Drag Race edition. We are going to be going through with my very good friends. We have Grinathan and Gobithan of the land of Twitch. And I have the absolutely lovely and stunning M, who I will be introducing in just a moment. The three of us are going to be going through each and every season of RuPaul's Drag Race. Not episode by episode, because there's so many review shows that do that. But Grin and M are both first-time viewers to the show and are experiencing it for the first time. And I'm a very long-time fan of this show, so we wanted to capture some of that early feeling of seeing the show and experiencing it for the first time, because there's so much passion that us as fans have, and I'm very excited to have them both here. And now I welcome them in. Hello, how are you both doing? It's very good to have you here. Thank you for doing this.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course, so glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having us. This is exciting. I feel like I'm a baby in all of this, and I just love learning about it.
Grin is baby confirmed.
Baby confirmed.
For all of us, I'm gonna be fully transparent. We filmed this already, but once before, and I screwed up on the filming end recording. I keep saying filmed, like we're doing like a video or something. I screwed up on the recording end, but I think it's for the best because there were things that I forgot to bring up last time.
And I kept cursing in things that should never be mentioned in polite company.
Just eldritch curses.
Yeah, exactly. And if everyone had heard that, well, first of all, we would have been cancelled, and second of all, half of humanity would have been under my control.
Are you talking about like swearing like a sailor or something? Because I do that all the time.
That's what I was going for, but then suddenly I was just like, yeah, let's just go with Eldrick.
I changed the narrative and Grin improv'd. Grin said, don't worry, I got you. I can do that challenge on Drag Race. So season
take the
1,
win.
right? Grin would absolutely win. Grin and Gob, your improv was, I don't have a good pun.
Was cursed,
was
but your
cursed.
performance was blessed. Sashay away, anyway.
Congratulations. You must sashay away and never come back. Speaking
Congratulations to us, you get to leave.
right? This is for the best. Speaking of that, Ru does not say the congratulation thing. Congratulations is used kind of unanimously for everyone.
I did notice that when I was watching season 1 back, like the second time. You'd hear her say congratulations to like someone who was just safe, and I would be like, oh, like after watching like older or newer seasons and then going back and watching season 1, I was like, oh, that's a little confusing. But I
Right?
did notice that.
I think it comes from the mentality of eventually, like, safe is the same as, like, losing. If you don't win, you're not important enough. Whereas season 1, it was more like, hey, you're safe. You get to be here another week. Congratulations. Or
Right.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, you're number 1. So this season, I'm going to introduce the contestants that we have. We have Akasha, Bibi Zahara Benet, Jade Sotomayor, Nina Flowers, Angina, Rebecca Glasscock, Chanel, Tammy Brown, and Victoria Pork Chop Parker, the icon, the legend, the star, the moment, the queen for all seasons. this season features a $10,000 cash prize, which is nothing.
No, it's literally like pocket change in comparison to what RuPaul's Drag Race was worth today.
Right.
But at the time, they didn't know what was going to happen to the show. They didn't even know if they were going to be continuing the season, Like,
That's true.
are we going to get enough sponsorship to even get renewed for a second one? So I think they put, very limited budget into it, hoping for like a really good return, and we definitely see that in the prize money.
Yeah, definitely.
Was it 10,000 or 20,000?
Was it 20? I thought it was 10. Is
I
it?
will look
Hold on,
this
I'm
up.
looking right now.
Um,
Because I thought it was 10.
it is 20,000.
Oh, it's 20. Okay,
Yeah,
well, I
but
misspoke.
still.
I mean, after the taxes.
And
Oh, right, because eventually
$5,000.
Rue eventually does say, like, remember to pay your taxes.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
She starts saying that in season 4. There's like, I don't know, even 20, that's nothing. Well, and in comparison to what? Like, what was Project Runway and Top Model doing, which is what this show was based off of? Those had to have been in the 100,000s.
They also had, at the time, a little bit longer of a run on TV already.
Mm,
So I feel like like RuPaul's Drag Race definitely took a lot of inspiration from Project Runway, and we see that in the friggin' season 1 filter. But I mean, Project Runway already had like a reputation behind their name
true.
and support from sponsors and whatnot, whereas drag wasn't that big in, what was it, like 2009 or something that this season came out.
Yeah,
Um
2009 is when it premiered.
yeah,
So it was probably filmed in 2008.
right. So, they were like fighting for their lives with these what are they called? Networks,
Right?
you
Well, and
know?
drag queens on TV with the American people watching.
Right. How dare they?
They're impressionable Americans that are watching this show, and they'll see the drag queens on TV and they'll riot and they'll become gay.
Think of the children.
Can
We
I?
have to.
It's
I'm going to echo what Trixie Mattel said. I don't know if y'all
Let's
have
hear it.
seen that video, because Trixie is talking about those two girls that do the like how to wear makeup in a God honoring way thing, and Trixie reacts to one of their videos, and they're like, and they're grooming these children, and Trixie pauses and is like, no drag queen is thinking, I really hope the kids have a great time to my show tonight. I hope those kids bring their tipping money.
Their allowance money, their chore money. Like, yeah, I really want to get paid with that.
Right. No drag queen is thinking, no, very few gay people are thinking about children when they go out.
Not a single one of them.
No. And it's just wild to me that people are like, drag queens are groomers. And Trixie says there's only one place in the world where men dress up in dresses and groom children, and then does the cross sign.
T.
T. But yeah, this show, I mean, drag queens on TV, gay people on TV, that wasn't a thing at this
No.
time. Do you
At
think?
least not on the main cable.
No, not that
Right,
people could see.
Wasn't the original like Queer as Folk out at that time? But it's still, that was like all
And the
we
L
had
word, I
as
think.
queer people.
Yeah.
That was it. That was literally all the representation we got, and it's like if you were a lesbian or gay, that you had that representation, but I don't think
Mhm.
like a lot of like bi or trans or non-binary people were represented in those two shows specifically.
No.
It was more so focused on the L's and the G's.
Right, absolutely. Anybody that was dressing up in clothes that were not assigned to their gender wasn't really seen on TV as anything more than a joke. I mean, we obviously had like Tootsie that came out in the 80s, which I don't know if y'all have seen that. That is peak queer cinema. Mrs. Doubtfire, what? Hairspray. Where Divine was on TV every now and again.
I was gonna say, I would almost classify like Ursula from The Little Mermaid as part of that, because
Fully.
if you are a part of queer culture, you know that Ursula is based off of Divine.
Right.
And that was like the very first like little sneak peek that you see of people trying to like slowly integrate it into the mainstream media without you know, making it obvious so
Mm-hmm.
they don't receive a bunch of pushback from
Subversive.
right.
Was it integration or was it like, oh, this is a good idea, let's profit off this?
I
I
mean,
mean,
probably.
John Waters really was breaking ground, you know, with queer culture and showing so much of this. And I really don't think that John gets enough credit for what he was doing in cinema.
I agree. And I think, isn't there a future season where they kind of pay homage to John Waters by having all the
Aggressively
scenes?
nods my head. Yes.
Yes. I loved that episode. I don't even remember what season it was,
It
but
was
I
season
loved that.
7.
Yeah, it was a really good
I
one.
gotta touch that. No, don't touch that poo. Touch that poo. I love that. Cha 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 heels. But when it's Christmas,
You could recite the whole episode.
I have an unhealthy addiction with this show. So let's recycle back to season 1 where, okay, we've got $20,000. That's nothing. That's garbage money. That's compared to what they're doing now. The original idea of the
Yes.
show is drag queens and their assistants. How do you think that the show would be different if it had been filmed that way? Do you think that the first episode would have gone different? Do you think the course of the show would have gone different if they were allowed to have their assistants there?
Having an assistant there for all, even if it was just like a group of assistants for the whole entire cast, it would probably ease a lot of that like anxiety and pressure that specifically revolves around sewing,
Right,
because we see Porkchop kind of got screwed over in the first episode because at this time nobody knew what was going to happen on Drag Race. You
right,
didn't know that you were going to have to sew. And she didn't know and she had no experience
right.
with that. But she is an icon and forever will be. And I'll go out and say it, she got shafted.
She did. She fully did. Porkchop has a huge lineage in drag culture.
Right, she started in like the 80s.
Yeah, Porkchop is a huge name. She competed against people like Alyssa.
She did, and she also led the way towards like rights for like gay people, queer people in general, and for that she ended up getting attacked in like the 90s, I think, and ended up getting a gunshot wound to the face, and I think like even acid damage that she had to get like reconstruction done.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Porkchop
Yeah,
is literally a hero before Drag Race and
yeah.
after.
She touches on it a little bit in the first episode. Well, the only episode that she's on, but she does
Wow.
she does I'm sorry. She does mention a little bit about some of like the violence and the scares that she experienced just by being a man in women's clothing.
Right,
And at the time that's all they were. There was
right.
no drag culture.
There was like ones in really small pockets.
And
Right.
speaking of drag culture, with the $20,000, that's pretty lucrative for a drag queen at this time
Oh,
because,
absolutely.
yeah, if you're going to like do any kind of performance anywhere, you're not even guaranteed to get paid, let alone being paid any like significant amount that makes up for all the time, the effort, the materials, and just all this that goes into your performance.
Right. Well, there's this pageant movie that used to be on Netflix. I don't know if it still is anymore. That was documenting pageant culture in the 90s. And some of those girls would go and spend thousands of dollars for these pageants that they were not getting paid to participate in. They were taking time away from whatever their day job was, their nighttime job of performing, and going out and hoping that they would win this title. And that's so indicative of queer culture because that's ballroom scene too, you know.
Now that you mention that, I remember Akasha being told by Santino in I think like the first or second episode. Santino was like, "Do you even want to be here?" And she was like, "I took off work. Of course I
Oh, that
want
was
to be
Shangela.
here." Was it Shangela? I thought it was season 1.
You're right, you're right. It was because I hate that they do this multiple times. I hate that there's a precedent for this. You're right.
Yeah, I don't like that drag culture has been gate kept by people who have no authority on it.
Oh, absolutely.
and no drag
Like
knowledge.
Yeah.
it just feels a little out of touch to be like a fashion designer and then to come and say that like a drag queen doesn't want to be in a drag competition because maybe doesn't have the ability to sew at the top level like you do, or
Oh, that's
she didn't.
debatable.
Well, yeah. I
Did
mean,
he win?
we'll just say Project Runway contestants. They have probably a little bit more experience than like your average season 1 drag queen.
Sure. Sure.
But,
Maybe.
you know, not everyone. Not everyone.
Certainly not
But
everyone on that judging panel.
no. No. I would say Merle had more experience, but
I miss
that's debatable.
Merle. This
But
was
I think it is like important to note that these girls, yes, to take off of work to them was very, very important,
right.
and they couldn't all afford to do so.
Right.
And to have like $20,000, that would have been life-changing for the amount of work that they were missing
Right.
and to help elevate their drag game.
It would have changed a lot for every single one of them to be able to have this opportunity. And like Grin already touched on, most of them weren't making money. Most of them were just sort of hoping for the best. You get a tip spot in a nightclub in the middle of nowhere, and you hope that someone will pay you, that someone will tip you so you can maybe buy a McChicken after your gig.
Right. And this is also 2009, like we were deep in a recession.
Yeah,
They were not earning anything at the time.
I totally didn't even think about that. You're so right.
Yeah, definitely drag queens, not just in 2009, but basically of all time, have been exploited for their work just because it's artistry, and artistry
Mm-hmm.
has never been really invested in, at least not in the modern era, where
Yeah.
And not
you
in
can be
America.
not in America, you can be a performer, you can be an artist, and it's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll pay you an exposure.
Right. Yeah, people.
That rent paying exposure.
I know. It's awful. Like pay people for their work
Right.
in something that they can actually consume and like put back out into the economy. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
your Instagram post is not something I can go pay my rent with.
Yep. And if you can't pay them that amount, be clear about that. Be upfront.
Right.
And don't
Right.
be like, oh yeah, you'll be paid this amount. And then when they show up, be like, oh yeah, actually, we can't pay you. So do you want to do
Right.
the
Like
show anyway?
the you can earn up to this amount. Well, that sounds great. When do I start?
Up to, but the bottom half of that cap might be $10.
Right.
Speaking of people who are paid in exposure, Miss Porkchop is referenced every season after this because of her legendary first departure from the show. Porkchop is our very first one to go, and honestly, it makes me very sad. We've already talked a little bit about her legacy and how we sort of feel about her. She was great, and I really feel like the season could have gone so differently had they had an assistant. I think she could have probably won the whole thing, in my opinion.
I agree because just from the initial meeting the queens, Porkchop was my number one. And when I saw her in the bottom two, I was like, okay, I get it with like her dress compared to everybody else. But she's a performer. She's a pageant queen, and like maybe she doesn't have the most lip syncing or the most sewing experience,
Mm,
but she's a damn good queen.
yeah,
And she's really good at what she does. And she has, at that point, she had what, like 3 decades worth of experience?
so much.
Yeah, I think this show definitely they shouldn't have been so unclear about like, oh yeah, by the way, you don't get to have assistants anymore. It
Right,
changed the entire fabric of the show, but it also turned into, especially as like the producers and everyone behind the scenes didn't really know what they were going for yet.
right.
It turned into a instructions unclear, sashay away situation.
Sasha Bell, I think I misunderstood the assignment. It's that, but even the judges don't understand.
They
The
do. They don't have a
critiques.
criteria. Yeah.
Yeah, the critiques are so weird.
They were very all over the place. I actually just watched episode 1. I rewatched it today, and like there was just so much has changed from
Mm,
then until now as far as like the structure of the show, the rapport between judge and contestant.
right.
a lot of that has changed.
Yeah. On that rapport, I feel like Merle was the one who sort of felt the most connected to them. Merle seemed like she really wanted to be there and really wanted to get to know the contestants and the performer behind it, where Santino was just sitting there like, oh, I don't know, I'm gonna catch a fly in my mouth now and tell you that your drag sucks. Okay, Rue, is that enough? Thank you.
Amy.
Santino, yeah, he was there for the paycheck, if we're just being honest. Like, not because he had drag knowledge or he brought anything to the table, but because he was a name.
Right.
I
He
don't know
was
if
very
he was
well known.
necessarily there for the paycheck. I think he wanted to have the opportunity to flex his expert opinion as like a fashion designer, and he learned how to judge from his own time on Fashion Runway, and it's just perpetual abuse basically through the industry, like
Mm,
being passed on and on. Like that doesn't excuse his behavior or his
right.
comments, but he learned it from somewhere.
Right. Michael
Right.
Kors.
Yeah.
Let's call a spade a
I,
spade.
I think it's also a little funny to be like, oh, I'm gonna take all of my judging inspiration from Michael Kors, who is like a very well-renowned, like big name,
Right.
and then it's like Santina Rice. Like, give me a break, girl.
Please. This is so shady. You're right, though. You're right.
The only time rice is a household name is if it's in grain form.
But not the Santino kind.
Never.
So we get through the show and we get to the end. We've talked about Pork Chop. I think that she would win. Em, I think you feel the same way. BB ends up winning the whole thing. The first season, the first representative of Drag Race, with the other top three being Nina and Rebecca. How do we feel post season with BB winning?
At the top two level, I was really okay with either of them winning. I
Mm,
don't think I could have ever like accepted Rebecca winning, but for me personally, I wanted Nina to win. I felt like she had this
same.
alternative style that we didn't see in anyone else throughout the season.
Right.
And BB, while she's a beautiful queen and like a very elegant performer, she is very pageanty, and we
Mm,
saw a handful of pageant queens this season.
mm,
And I think what set her apart was like her like worldly experience.
mm.
I think I'm all right with Baby winning just because she does, as Em said, like she has a lot of like refinement to her. She is a pageant queen. She has a lot to present, a lot to perform.
Mm.
She does give out a lot. I was also rooting for Nina Flowers to win, but I don't think mainstream media was ready for Nina to be the face of drag. It would have been too shocking,
Subversive.
perhaps
Right.
subversive. Yeah,
I agree with that.
And I think at this point in RuPaul's Drag Race, they were looking for like a female impersonator to win.
Very
Whereas
that.
Nina specifically said in her entrance, she said, I don't consider myself a female impersonator. Like, I'm androgynous.
Right.
And I don't think the show itself was ready to have a winner like her.
Right.
no,
No, I
definitely
agree.
not.
I think if this cast was brought in now, today, I think that Nina would absolutely 100% have swept the whole thing.
Nina would
Very
have
possible.
swept. I think Angina would have been up in the top three as well.
If the judges could get over their whole like "oh, you look like a boy" mindset,
Yeah.
which does seem to permeate through quite a few of the seasons,
Yeah.
Right.
Up
and
until almost season 7 or 8. That's a.
even then, I'm kind of always like half expecting it at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
It's
same.
like so ingrained because, I mean, like I said, I think in the last question we were talking about, but they wanted a female
Right.
impersonator,
Yeah,
and to be a bald queen, you know, people don't view like females as bald queens, even though
Yeah.
we know that that's not true. But in drag culture, and I think in RuPaul's drag culture, she wants like a
Glamazon.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it also sent like an international message just because Bebe is from Cameroon, and
Cameroon.
Cameroon And Cameron is not exactly heartwarming towards the
Oh
queer
yeah.
community. So it really was also like a political message of like, hey, you do belong.
And Rue loves being political. Rue loves that. Going back really
Yeah.
quick to what you said, Em, about the man comment, I do want to say one of the most iconic lines from this season is, I think, what I don't remember her last name because I'm not good with celebrities. The Destiny's Child,
Michelle
Michelle
Williams.
Williams, when she says to Akasha, or to the judges about Akasha, I just saw a messy man. Jake and I quote that all the time. Alaska and Willem on their podcast quote that all the time. They have it as like a soundbite that they'll play. I just saw a messy man. It's so disrespectful and hateful, but I freaking turn up to it.
That's such a read when you're talking about a drag queen. Like that is such a read.
It's so good. It's so good. God, it's fantastic. Those moments are what I love about the show.
Actually,
So
that could bring up another point
yeah,
before we move on. That shadiness isn't always
right,
meanness. So if it's all in good faith, which it's hard to tell if you're on the outside looking in,
right.
but when some of these queens are just like going at each other with like nails and hairspray and all that, and they're just fighting to the death verbally over something, and then they're totally fine afterwards, and people are like, oh wow, they're bullying each other. It's like no, that's just how they communicate.
Yeah,
Right.
that's queer
Reading,
culture.
yeah, reading and shade are so ingrained within like queer culture, but especially drag culture.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just part of the culture, and we see that a lot in like future seasons
Mm,
where a queen is like not able to be is not able to handle being read.
right.
And they it causes tension between the queens, but like
Alexis
when
Michelle.
you right, when you have someone who's open to being read because they know they can read someone else back, you don't have that tension of like, oh well, you said this about me and I'm gonna hold it over your head for the rest of your life. Like, no girl, we were reading each other. Like
Right.
it's not out of hate, it's not out of spite, it's really out of love
It
and
Yeah,
like
I
is.
think it's
friendship.
a defense mechanism because you're so used to people like saying horrible things to you or
Mm,
even
Right.
worse, and if
You
they
have
can
to
do it
combat
to
that
each other,
fast.
yeah, you build up each other's like thick skin.
right.
Yeah.
It's armor building because
Yeah.
as queer people, especially at that time, and many of us who grew up in a not so accepting period of time understand that we are getting attacked from all these conservative angles and people that are close to us. So we sort of build up this armor with each other. And reading is, to quote Paris is Burning, reading is telling you you're ugly without telling you you're ugly because you already know that you're ugly. So it's sort of poking at this thing that helps us armor build so that we can laugh at it and that we can snap back. So when those homophobes come up and they're like, ugh, why do you look like that? I just see a clown. They could be like, your dad didn't have a problem with it last night. And then you snap back and they don't know what to do because they've been snapped at. They don't know what to do. So they're defenseless and you're fine. You are unbreakable. You're unshakable.
Exactly, because a homophobe will like try to go for the gut when they say something mean to you,
Mm,
but like a drag queen will. So there's nothing that a homophobe can say to you that's gonna like shock you more than like what a drag queen said to you last week.
right. It's something that I think a lot of us very deeply understand of having a thick skin. You have to. And it's to survive in this world, to not want to go to a dark place, you have to have that thickness that you can protect yourself so that you can survive. Because the most important
Right.
thing is getting to the next day. So if you can learn to laugh at yourself, you can learn to laugh at those silly things, you can learn to not take it seriously, which is what Rue is always saying. Don't take life seriously. You can make it through anything.
Right. You gotta let, the things that aren't important just roll off your shoulder.
Right.
Because if you focus on every single little thing that's said to you every single day of your life, like your brain is gonna spontaneously combust.
Right. You'd be in such a dark place. Moving on to the challenges, because I want to see what y'all's favorite was from this season. Did we have a favorite challenge? I know it's an early one. There are not a ton of them.
I really liked the makeover
Yeah.
and the absolute themed one.
Miss Mandarin.
Yes.
That's
That was so
horrendous.
iconic.
Isn't it so awful?
You can cut that out.
No, I'm going to keep that forever.
It's a soundbite
Thank you
now.
for doing it with me, Em. I'm glad I wasn't alone. Well, Grin
Oh, I
was
was
just like,
full on waiting for you to do it and be like, ha, you fell on that sword, you're on your own.
anyway, so sorry. Yes, that's a great challenge.
I think my favorite challenge was the Mac Viva Glam just because
Yes.
of the impact it had like
Yes.
immediately after the challenge and on Gina's like reveal. It was
Yeah.
just it left like an emotional impact on me that has yet to fade away, and I hope it never
Yeah.
does.
Absolutely.
That was such an
Because
iconic moment.
it really was like I think the most iconic moment of this season
Mm,
because before that, Angina was a bit of an underdog.
yeah.
And I think when she won that challenge and then, laid her heart out for the whole world, everyone's realizing like she has a lot to fight for, and now we see it. And she became a fan favorite really quickly because of that. And it was really sad to see her go, like the next week?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, definitely I became a fan favorite just because she's kind of the embodiment of the queer community. Like,
Right.
hide who you
Right?
are, hide your faults, don't talk about it, and be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
that's basically what is being pushed onto the queer community. And Angina turning it around and being like, no, we have to celebrate life
Yeah.
and being open and honest. Just, it's so inspirational. And it's like, you want to follow someone like that. You want to cheer them on because that's what we want for all of us.
Yeah. Completely agreed. I think Angina is incredible, and she's one of my favorites this season, probably right next to Chanel. I think the two of them from this season are some of the most iconic for different reasons. But who's yours from this cast?
I love Angina.
Yeah.
Um, Pork Chop, I love her.
Love Miss
And I
Pork
love
Chop.
Talina. Like
Yeah.
for me, those three would have been my top three
Yeah.
if I was a judge. Oh, oh,
Yeah.
oh. And Tammy Brown. What the
Tammy.
heck?
Tammy's on her own
What?
planet.
She is on her own planet. I can't believe we haven't talked about her yet.
For me, Nina Flowers was my immediate first pick because it's
Mm,
just like such an immediate statement.
yeah.
Yeah.
Angina, especially after the Mac Viva Glam challenge, I was just enthralled. I was like, I adore this queen.
Yeah.
And Pork Chop, honestly.
Yeah, Pork Chop is great. Pork Chop is incredible. See, I love Angina as well for all the reasons y'all mentioned. She's just lovable. But Chanel is great TV. All of her, I am beautiful. Why won't you tell me this? Ugh, I was eating it up.
The first episode she says something like, I know the judges aren't giving me any reaction because they don't want me to think that I already have it like in the bag. I'm gonna win. They don't want me to think that. So they're just giving me no reaction at all. And I'm like, yes, girl, that's exactly why.
I love her. She's great TV. You cannot
She's
deny
so
that.
good. She's so good with like her ass hanging out and everything, always.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Really quick talking about Tammy, because you brought her up. Tammy has one of the most iconic moments in the show, and probably in the franchise, of literally standing there and not lip syncing at all. Even a little bit. Just
Yeah.
mugging. What an
Just
iconic way to go.
she was moving to the groove, she was swaying, she didn't know the words, and she owned it. Like she owned
In her
it.
weird Tammy way.
There's
There's
been a few queens who have tried to kind of get out of the lip syncing,
right.
Yeah.
either from, just not lip syncing to wearing a mask to, you know, facing away from the judges for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
The classic
And
hand over the mouth.
Yeah.
yes.
Charlie
So
Hyde's just standing there and swaying back
Yeah.
and forth.
I think this was the start of a not necessarily like giving up, but sort of just being like this competition really wears you down.
Right.
and I'd like to go home and relax.
Right.
Tammy touches on that too. Like that.
Right.
That's not an environment for someone like Tammy Brown.
No, and she was pretty vocal about that.
Yeah.
I just don't like the competition part. I don't like the attitude. I don't blame her. There's about girls who walked out. There's this really iconic, I'm going to send it to y'all if I can find it. There's this really iconic moment that happens in UK, I think season 3. This queen named Ginny Lemon, who's an icon in UK queer culture, is supposed to lip sync. And the lip sync starts, and her competitor starts doing all kinds of stunts, splits, tricks. Ginny starts the lip sync and kind of sashays down the runway. And you think that she's going to turn around like all the queens do and just like fiercely walk while lip syncing, because Ginny's a little bit older. You don't think that she's going to necessarily spin the house down, but you think she might at least give a silly little campy show. She waves to everybody, cackles, and walks away. The lip sync is still going. Her competitor goes, has no idea, finishes the lip sync, and then looks and realizes Jenny's not there anymore. And all the queens are gagged. They're all like screaming and cheering because they think that her competitor just noticed and was like, okay, let me put on a great show. But she just did. She just kept going and was like, I had no idea Jenny was gone. And that surpassed Tammy as the most iconic not lip syncing leaving that I've ever seen on this show.
That.
It's incredible.
Yeah, that definitely goes into the Hall of Fame for queens who like decide their own destiny.
Yeah.
Who else is in that Hall of Fame? Because Chanel is for me.
Chanel, for sure. I mean, her just being like, I don't want to do it. I want to go home. I can take the pressure of it.
Right.
Did she really want to go home, though, or did she just say that? Because she was fine with, like, not being sent home.
She specifically asked when the judges asked who should go home. She said me.
She said,
I don't want to do this.
Yeah, but she wasn't sent home, was she?
She was.
I think she was that episode.
She was sent home. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think she's still lip sync. And, I mean, she lip synced, but she wanted to go home. I don't think she didn't want to be there. But I think of the other ones in the Hall of Fame, as much as I would love to put Charlie up there, I don't know. That lip sync was so weak. I don't feel like it felt iconic. It just felt like, ugh.
I think Charlie would be in the Hall of Fame if she didn't make a million different excuses at the reunion episode as to why she went home.
My rib hurt. The moon was full.
Right.
There was a dog that happened to be walking by, and I wanted to pet it.
The cat ate my homework.
I had the wrong shoes.
Did you see season 3 of All Stars, Em?
I did.
Okay, so yeah, Ben de la Creme is definitely the top for that Hall of Fame.
Bendela's up there for sure.
That was amazing. Like winning challenge after challenge after challenge after challenge, and be like, no, I'm out.
I'm going home. Right.
Do you think that like if season 3 of All Stars was rigged for Trixie to win, do you think Trixie still would have won if Ben was there?
No.
I don't think so either.
No, Ben was gonna win the whole thing. Ben sending herself home was how anybody else won that season. Because Ben would have won. Ben was winning. And even if they did the jury format, there is nobody in gay hell who would have voted against Ben. She could have sent home that entire cast, and they all would have said, Ben de la Creme, top 2. Every one of them.
For sure.
What makes you think that it was rigged for Trixie to win?
I say that because of the whole jury situation.
Oh, like, you mean it was rigged by the queens? I see.
Yeah, like.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if Kennedy was top 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think she was ever meant to win. I think it should have been, like, aside from Ben, it should have been Shangela up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like Shangela said, this is my graduation, and I was like for sure thinking that Shangela was going to win.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we will be talking about Shangela very soon in season 2, and we will definitely get to 3 sooner than we realize.
Yes, sorry.
And no, you're fine. I can't.
That.
I'm excited to talk about that season because that's a great one. We have so much of Drag Race to get through, and getting to a wrap-up point of this fantastic first season that set up so much, is so different from everything else. Do you have a super iconic moment that you can think of from this season that makes you think that was a great moment in season 1?
Mine for sure is still on Gina's reveal and just like the emotional impact that had. Like later on, I think there's a little bit of like nudging towards like, here, tell us your trauma. This is a safe place, and then move the camera onto them. Versus
Yeah.
on Gina's outburst was like legitimate.
Right. It was so raw and vulnerable, but it did give them a good format for what they could do because with this show, not only is it showing drag queens on TV, but it's also revealing the soft human that's underneath it so that Betty and Bob Beer can see these are real people. These aren't just some man dressing up in a dress, you know? They can see a more human side, which I think is important for the audience that Drag Race is trying to reach.
And I would probably say that my most iconic moment is the same, because, you know, with Angina specifically, I feel like we probably already said this, but she just represents like queer culture and queer history because, like we were saying before, like, you know, to be gay, to be in drag, like to do all of these things, you're kind of shunned from society, and
Right,
especially with the HIV and AIDS epidemic, you were especially shunned from society.
right,
And so to have someone who is so open about experiencing that
right.
on live television when she knows she's gonna get backlash for it,
Mm,
it really personifies the entire epidemic and the experience that is queer culture.
yeah, I completely agree. It was a really beautiful, vulnerable moment, and I think it allowed us to love her so much more. I will say, since y'all said something very kind and sweet and lovely, I'm gonna be messy. And
Used to.
I'm gonna say my favorite moment was when Akasha fell.
Stop! No!
She did a
That was a
spin.
good
She
one.
caught herself basically. She didn't let it defeat her.
That sit and spin was so iconic.
To be
Improv.
fair, though, it's a very slippery runway, and it's like what, 2 feet wide.
Oh my god, that
Right.
tiny little runway on a
It's like made of
shoebox.
plastic.
Right. I also love
Oh
that
my
moment when
gosh.
Tammy leaves the stage and Rue's like, "That's my entrance."
That was a good one. That was a good one. Because only Tammy Brown would do that.
Only Tammy Brown. Well, wrapping up this season, this was a absolutely fantastic season to start out with. It set up so many incredible moments going forward. I'm very excited to talk about season 2 and all the things that this season set up for because it really gives us a good blueprint, but we're still fine tuning it and we're still working on it as we still don't even have Bring Back My Girls. It's just all right, bring the girls back. Bring the girls back to the runway. Congratulations, you're safe. We've got all these catchphrases that are not quite established yet. We're still working towards. We don't have lipstick messages on the mirror. We don't have Untucked really. There's like so much that hasn't happened yet. That's going to start in season 2 and I'm excited to get into that. Thank you both so much for doing this with me and being a part of this and sharing your experience with the show and your love of the show. And we will chat with y'all very soon. And for everyone listening, have a fantastic week. Know you're doing a fantastic job and you're doing the best that you can, which is all that you can do. And we will talk to you very soon. Goodbye.
Bye.